Good evening, everybody. We want to welcome you to this regularly scheduled meeting of the Caldwell Urban Renewal Agency. It's March 10th. It's a little bit after 6 o'clock, and we will ask our secretary to call the roll.
Chairman Porter?
Here.
Commissioner Doty?
Here.
Commissioner Warwick?
Here.
Commissioner Brooks?
Here.
Commissioner Cole?
Here.
Commissioner Allgood?
Here.
Commissioner Moore?
Here.
Very good. We have a full house tonight. The first item on our agenda this evening is a special presentation, and the request to speak came in a little bit late as we were putting the agenda together, but it's Todd. You're up. Todd is with Maverick, and they're building a nice new place out in the new North Urban Renewal area. Welcome.
Yes, Todd Myers, 185 South State Street, Salt Lake City, Utah. I work for Maverick C stores, and I'm happy to say we have very successful stores here in Caldwell, and so we'd like to do another one. And it is part of the urban renewal area up on the north end, just abutting the highway. Green Road is on the back side, and you may know how Green Road intersects with the highway. It's worked in the past because of low traffic counts, but as that's going to increase with usage in that area as the redevelopment agency becomes more and more successful up there, that street needs to be moved so that it lines up with the other street to the south. It's a private street, but it'll make a four-way intersection there. What we're requesting is help with extending water and sewer. And so right now, this area north of the highway is not served by water and sewer, but it will need to in the future, and Maverick would much rather have water and sewer versus wells and septics. And so there is that cost. There's also, of course, the benefit for the whole agency. As it develops, it's going to also have these utility needs. And so we're thinking if we could get some participation from the agency would help us pencil this project. And, you know, if we can, we'd like to be under construction this spring even. And so we can get some shovels in the ground, get a little interest in the area, kind of prime the pump for the agency up there. Maverick has a pretty loyal following, and we get a lot of cars in our parking lot. And so typically that makes other commercial uses say, wow, if Maverick's going here, maybe we should consider it too.
Thank
Any
you, Todd.
questions?
Commissioner Doty.
Just a couple questions. Are you willing to fund it up front? Because as a new urban renewal area, I'm guessing it has no money in it yet, Raylyn, or very little? Very little, so there wouldn't be any money in there at this present time to do, especially a project that large. And I don't know, Mr. McDonald's here as to how far the water and sewer already goes out there, but certainly the cost of that, I doubt urban renewal has those funds in its account at this time.
Yeah, we're looking at extending it, include boring underneath the highway and taking it up just past Green Road for easy connection for future development. It's going to be, we've submitted the engineer's estimate, but it's roughly around $500,000. We understand the agency does not have that currently, and so yeah, we could fund it and get it repaid back through our taxes.
Any other questions? Mr. Commissioner Moore.
Thank you for coming to Caldwell.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great little area right there, and I'm totally in love with that stinker down the street there, but I'm sure everybody will survive and get along, and there's a lot of traffic on that road, so I appreciate that. I appreciate Maverick.
I know very well the president of Stinker Stations. They're a good organization.
Great organization, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. If we could have Rob come up and kind of give us an overview of to what it would take to accomplish what's being asked. And I know you and your staff have been doing a lot of work in this area recently, so.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commission. I concur with everything that's been said so far. We have been working very closely with Maverick on the utilities to make sure that we can get utilities up to that location. The amount is just under $500,000, but it includes the utility extension and then the decel lane on the highway, which is probably the other big ticket item. We have reviewed this. There was one line item that I was working with Maverick to understand a little better, and that was an 8-foot wide trail that had been mentioned, but everything else on here looks consistent with what was in the original urban renewal master plan, or I should say the urban renewal plan, and is consistent with the growth and development that we're pushing out there.
Any questions for Mr. McDonald? Commissioner Moore?
Rob, tell me, when are we going to see the math on this? When will we see everything that's going to be asked? Is that going to come by next month? What's the timeline to see what this is going to all look like on a presentation?
So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Moore, I do have some information on that. I've started putting together a pretty comprehensive, spreadsheet report that breaks out all of these different projects into individual segments. And the purpose of this is to help the commission kind of wrap their heads around what each segment is, what each segment is going to cost, or the estimated cost, and then maybe how we figure out the priorities for those particular projects, and then how much of those are going to be funded by urban renewal, and then what we would expect the developers to fund. So you'll see a little bit of that even later tonight, I believe. And then it's a work in progress, and so there's still going to be more added to it as we go, but we're just trying to hit the critical, obvious projects that have to come first.
Thank you, Rob.
Mr. Allgood?
Yeah, kind of along the same lines, you hit on it a little bit, who's paying for what? And I know we're coming into budget season here. Will any of this be included in city-funded projects as you're planning your next year? Will anything out that direction of town to the west be just a city-funded project as the city grows that direction?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Allgood, that's a very good question. At this point, we have not included anything. Of course, we're in the infancy of putting our budgets together, and we're working very hard with all the departments. We are not planning to include anything specifically in this area under city budgets. And one of the main reasons we are trying to avoid that is because there's areas that are not annexed into the city yet, and so it's a little harder to justify spending city taxpayer money on infrastructure that's not in the city outright, even though we know there's a lot of annexation coming. If it was the city council's desire, we could certainly look at budgeting some of these projects through the city.
Any other questions? Great, thank you, Rob. Yep. Mr. Myers, it appears that we're on kind of a favorable track, and we will look for some action items coming up real soon. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Next item on our agenda is our standard conflict of interest declaration. Is there anything on our agenda this evening that causes a conflict with any of the commission members? Okay. Seeing none, that takes us to our public comment portion, where anybody in the audience this evening can address the commission concerning matters that are not on the agenda. And I'm not seeing any. Takes us to our consent calendar. Do we have a motion as to the disposition of the consent calendar?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Allgood?
I move that we approve the one item that's listed on the consent calendar.
Very good. We have a motion by Mr. Allgood. Is there a second? And second by Ms. Warwick. Any discussion? Would the secretary call the roll?
Commissioner Allgood?
Yes.
Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner Porter?
Yes.
Commissioner Doty?
Yes.
Commissioner Warwick?
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks?
Yes.
Commissioner Cole?
Yes.
Very good. That brings us to our update reports, and I think Stephen might be working to see if we have one online.
Chairman, Commissioners,
Mr.
we
Jenkins.
have someone trying to get on the Teams link here. If you don't mind going to the next, and then we'll revisit it as soon as they're done. I appreciate it. Thank you.
The next one is from Mr. Derek Cooper's organization, RRC Development. Is there anybody here with a report?
No, that is the next one. That was the first
Okay. Mr. Maybon, welcome. You get the perfect attendance award.
Finally. I don't know if I ever got that.
just missed one day or two. But so where we're at is we gave another design. We provided it, I provided it to Mr. Hilty. I'm not exactly sure that we need to, but I was kind of just being safe, and I talked to Mr. Hilty about it a little bit before the meeting. There are a few like slight design changes after going through like engineering and whatnot. There's like more units on top of the roof, so it might look a little different. Then, you know, one of the patios is built in a little bit differently based on just the structural design. And so I wanted to make sure you guys saw that, so you can review it one last time. We're ready to submit to the city if that's approved. And it's not, I think Mr. Hilty said you need to get it on the agenda to get it approved. Alternatively, I think the DDA says if you don't have any comments in 15 days after it's provided, then we can move ahead. But we just wanted to make sure that if you guys had any questions or comments or concerns on any of those updates, you could provide them.
Great, thanks, Mr. Mabon. Commissioner Moore.
Mr. Chairman, question, Sean, did your original plans, did you have something there that had some residential living in that project?
We basically had flex space in there, and so it was residential office, flex space, so depending on kind of what we were doing there, yeah.
Okay, so you didn't have any issue with parking or anything like that, right, with that? That was all presented, wasn't it? It's been a while.
Yeah, the parking's the same as it was, so.
Yeah.
And there might be actually, it's actually a little bit different because of the Fifth Avenue. There are some parking spots we were gonna put on there, but I don't think the city wanted those, kind of how, the police station parks. Just because of the traffic flow on Fifth, there's a lot of traffic there.
Yeah, Sean, give me your definition. What's commercial flex space? I've heard a lot of things about that one.
Well, it's more like office lofts. The flex space essentially is flexing on what the use is and size, if that makes sense. But it's not really, and maybe it's commercial, but it's mostly like office, residential flex space, so.
Gotcha, okay.
Probably when you're hearing it, it's more or less like a bigger space where they're not quite sure what they're gonna put in there
Yeah.
wall-wise, and so they keep it kind of fluid.
Right, got you. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Mabon? Great, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Chairman, question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, not for him. Question for you.
Oh,
Going
yes.
back to up to number one, is that the property we're waiting on Idaho Power to move a utility pole?
No.
No? No.
No, it's not. The first RRC contractors on Plain and Kimball, that's the one that,
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about update number one I mentioned.
Oh, sorry.
yes.
Is that the property we're waiting on Idaho Power
Yes.
to move to the power pole?
But
Nobody was here, but is there any resolution? Is it next year or 10 years from now? Or when is there going to be a resolution on that? Do we know?
yeah, I believe we do. There's been significant movement on that, thanks to Councilperson Doty, who contacted me.
Mr. McDonald might have the more updated dates, though.
Yes, there's been significant movement.
That was the only question I had, so I was just wondering.
Thank you. Mr. McDonald, would you address that? Did you catch all of that?
Power pole, Mr. McDonald.
I apologize, I was talking to the city engineer about something else, but the power pole project has, let me just jog my memory for a minute before I don't want to misspeak. We negotiated with Idaho Power. They came in and gave us two options to relocate the power pole. One was overhead for $40,000, and the other was underground for $100,000, I believe. And being that this is a temporary condition, we decided that we wanted to move forward with the lesser cost. They had, I believe, I would have to check with engineering, Jacob in particular. I believe that we've paid the fee. Maybe Ray Lynn knows.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's been paid to Idaho Power, and then we have been told by their upper management they will try to expedite the design as quick as they can and get a crew out. And so They didn't give me any specific dates, but what I feel like that means is that in the next couple months, we may see some boots on the ground out there.
Any question on that clarification? Thank you, Rob, and thank you, Brad. Brings us to our next, do you? Yeah. Okay. We're going to insert the 7th and Main developer, Dean Pape, at this point, and he's online. Dean, can you hear us?
I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Welcome.
Is that a yes?
Yes, we hear you just fine. Thank you.
Okay. Great, thank you. Well, I'm sorry again, I'm unable to join you guys in person. Seems to be, I always have an event, this time being my twin's birthday, so I'm sorry I'm not there in person, but I appreciate you guys adjusting the calendar a little bit and schedule today to meet. Actually a little earlier than the session. Pleasant to be seen on this, and I need a confirmation of that, otherwise I can just talk through it.
Yeah. Could you repeat that? You're breaking up a little bit.
Sorry, no, I just want to make sure that if I shared my screen, you would be able to see it.
Yeah, we're good.
You able to see my screen?
Yes.
It's a fairly familiar image, but I do like to bring it up because we're very proud of the utility and all the opportunities that we get to be a part of in Caldwell. First of all, thank this group for all the opportunities provided us, and excited to dive in and talk a little bit about phase 2 of this project. So phase 2 was adjusted with an amendment to the current DDA from phase 1, refocusing it on what product could be built there on the timeline. And of course, the original agreement was really focused on a boutique hotel. This group allowed us to move forward with additional options, mostly focused on non-residential. You guys able to hear me already?
Well, it's breaking up. We're getting a real weak signal. So we're not able to hear well enough to conduct business, really.
There's like a real echo kind of situation.
Yeah, we're getting an echo, pretty profound.
Why don't I jump off? You guys keep going with the meeting. I will try and get a better connection and get back on.
Mr.
right.
Chairman, I have a question.
Mr. Moore?
So do we have a copy of an insurance, liability insurance on that existing lot out here? Can that be communicated to him so maybe he can follow up with us?
Sure.
See if there's something that somebody has for insurance,
Yeah.
liability insurance on that lot. I'm sure everybody says we do, but have we seen it?
Mark is nodding. Mark, do you want to address that?
I'll reach out to Dean, make sure I get you a report on that. Thank you.
Okay. Well, let's move ahead. Sorry for all the awkwardness here. Base layer. Shane, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Chairperson, Commissioners, just here to give an update, our monthly update. Do you have our, oh, thank you. Let's see if this works. Okay. Okay, so I'll just give you a project status update on the the ITD approach project. We've improved the intersection, and the approach is now completed. We had ITD sign off on the approach on the 5th of March, and so the total reimbursements that we were authorized under our agreement was $624,136. And we believe we're under budget, about $200,000 on that project. So we were able to get some competitive pricing and bids on it, and Wright Brothers finished it up for us. So that one's done. Give you some visuals so you can see the striping work actually got completed. That's a good vantage point. We'll kind of scroll through these. Arrows are in, stop signs in, and the deceleration lane onto the property is also installed and in. And you can kind of see now that people can enter the property. We'll put our marketing signs back up. Those kind of got demolished during the construction phase, but. So market activity, I can give a quick update on market activity. Market demand continues to be steady, I'll say, for the property, and primarily from end users. So we do have an undisclosed 40-acre user that we're in discussions with. We also have a 20-acre user that we're in discussions with, a local Caldwell business that would like to expand and stay in Caldwell. But they're not finding great alternative options for growth, and they like this site. We also have a 5-acre user that we've received a letter of intent to purchase from just in this past week. They would build a spec industrial building on the property, and they're in the market, I'll say. So all total, it could lead to 250 to 300 jobs based on, what we're being told. Some of those jobs are already existing in the market, so they wouldn't be exiting the market. And so we're going to try to do our best to secure those deals. As always, that comes with questions from buyers. And so the more recent questions that we've received from buyers are, how do I access the land? Where are my utilities coming from? What sizes are they? We're getting that question more often than not. And when can I pull a building permit and actually build my building? And what's the timing of that? So it feels like we're on the cusp of being able to answer some of those questions. And thank you, Mr. Commissioner, for attending the meeting at the airport not long ago, along with Rob and Steven. I think that really was a turning point, a pivot point in this project for the city and for the area. Here in this next slide, you'll see just our real preliminary outline of how the parcels could lay out, some of the circulation roads could lay out, and we've worked with city engineering with Rob and his team to really kind of hone this in. I think we're all settling in on this design, certainly for whoops. Does this have a pointer? No pointer? Okay. Certainly for gravel lane, I think that's, a key intersection. We've already, built the approach. As far as Spring Lake goes, and I think that this ties into, Maverick site, it would be a natural to see utilities come from the south to the north, based on our discussions with Rob. And then there's some other things we would like to do is really, try to keep some flexibility for the end user options. If the one group, moves forward with the 40-acre purchase, it would be more along the interstate side of things. Our 20-acre user is more kind of to the northwest, and then our 5-acre users express interest more along, Highway 2026 along Pond Lane. And so we'll have some things to work through there, I think, as far as, access onto 2026 with ITD at Pond Lane and the such. But as you can kind of see, we've laid out what we think are, general market parcels, and those configurations can change. So we'd like some flexibility in being able to change those as we move through our process. We just don't have that good of a crystal ball. So city engineering recommendations on improvements and funding. So we did receive, after our meeting, a priority list that we had kind of gone through with the stakeholders, and we've kind of outlined agency-funded improvements. We'd like to fast-track the design and figure out the funding vehicles and mechanisms and timelines to be able to move, certain projects forward. Natural gas is one of those items, and we did get some feedback from Intermountain Gas on that, and we'll share that with you. Pond Lane extension and the access we visited on, or I did a minute ago. So these are some of the priority projects in order of priority that Rob had identified to us, based on his 30,000 foot viewpoint of where he would see this moving forward for kind of this regional section. So we outlined the items that we felt were, in the 2026 more immediate time frame. There are some in the 27 time frame, and as you can see, 28 and all the way out to 29 on some of these. And depending on how quickly or slow we move, those timelines could change. This part of the project here is really, what I'll call kind of the backbone of the extension into the North Urban Renewal District to the north of 2026. So with the gravel lane approach already being built, we would extend, or we'd hope to extend, I guess, water, sewer, and utilities up through this part of the project sooner rather than later, so that we can activate this section and get some of these buyers kind of ready to move forward. This was a quote that we received from Nicole at Intermountain Gas. They will serve this area. It's all consumer driven from the standpoint of the end user consumer. And once they know the demand for use for the gas facility, then they can start a construction project and bring gas from the east to the west, which would then bring it onto this site and activate that entire area for gas service. Nicole thought that was about a 6-month process from the time they received the work order request. So I think that fits within the timeframes that I'm hearing these other end users would be working in as well for the most part. As you can see, this is the 2021 URA additional road functional road classifications. We've really kind of followed along with this map. This was your guideline, and I think that you'll see that this guideline, follows how we're designing this out currently. And then I think, this is back to the Pond Lane section. And if you look at circulation in the area, if you kind of follow the purple dotted line or lines, you'll see good interconnection with other parcels, not just our piece, but to the south and to the west, and also to the north of the canal. So I think, based on what we're discussing with the city, this seems, and with our planning backgrounds, I think this feels pretty good as far as design and circulation go. So then the next steps, I guess, are questions in all of our minds, and we're trying to figure out, how do we pay for all this, and who is paying for what, and that's kind of back to, Rob's comment earlier about his viewpoints on payments and what should be paid for by the Urban Renewal Agency and the city, and what should be developer driven, paid for by developers. And so he's got a nice matrix put together, and I think he's planning to share that with you, sounds like soon. And so from our perspective, it'd be great to, and we've seen some preliminary budgets so far. So I think those don't seem out of line. I don't know where the numbers came from, but we can certainly look into all that as a group collectively a little further. From a design perspective, we don't have designs for any of the roadways. These are just line drawings that are very high level at this point. But I think, once we have a good indicator of how this gets paid for, we're prepared to help in the design side of things if the Urban Renewal Agency would like us to kind of progress the design forward so that we can get real solid budgetary numbers and continue, through these next steps. The gas extension, again, will be driven by end users, so if we can check boxes and answer questions for those end users, I think they'll move forward with purchase and sale agreements. Until we get real firm numbers, just like this board, it's very difficult to make any decisions to move ahead on projects. So, and Pond Lane, I've talked plenty about that one. So that's kind of where we're at today. And do you have any questions for me?
Thank you, Shane. Questions?
Of course.
Commissioner Moore?
Mr. Chairman, so the, congratulations on getting that many people interested, and you don't have a sign one out there, at least not now you don't, but I'm sure that's going to take off. What discussions have you had with Treasurer and the attorney here on some of these shared expenses? What's gone on so far? Can you tell us that?
We really haven't talked to the treasurer, the attorney just yet, and I think we're not quite ready for that. So I think our next steps would be to really make sure that we're prioritizing the projects correctly and that everybody's nodding their head saying, yes, this is the right approach. Then we can, look through budgets and make sure that the city's on board with what we're doing. We're all kind of in agreement on that piece, and then we'd love to have those discussions with you folks. I think at that point it would make some sense to, kind of get down into the weeds a little further.
Thank you.
Of course.
Commissioner Doty?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. Clearly, it needs to be developed. We have to have streets to move out into that section, and that's the whole point of the Urban Renewal District, is to continue to develop that area up. I think when Mr. McDonald identifies what he believes falls into the structure, I think we're right on track. He checks it with our attorney to ensure that those qualify, and then we always check it with Ray Lynn to make sure at some point in the future we can afford to reimburse that. And we certainly, you're one of the first, so I don't think there's as much worry as it would be as we get along the way here. We don't want to get so deep that it takes 20 years to get out of it either. So I think we're on the right path, and we probably need some numbers to give you a better decision of whether or not we're willing to commit to that. But certainly roads need to be built in that area.
Thank you.
Rob, did you have anything that you wanted to add? If not, that's fine.
I'm happy to go through my presentation now or at another time, whatever your preferences.
Okay. Why don't we let you sit still and we'll just get through our reports here. Any other questions for Shane? Very good. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Great report. We appreciate it. Is our guest online? Okay. All right, let's try with Mr. Pape and 7th and Main Developer again.
Can you guys hear me now?
We can hear you. We're not seeing you yet, but
That's good. I guess hearing's better than seeing. But can you, if I share, you can see, or you can see my headshot right now?
no,
Great.
not quite yet. Here it comes. All right.
Now?
Yes.
Great. Trying to multitask. Let me move a couple things here. Okay. You should be seeing the Tillian. We on the same page?
Yes, we are.
Great. Well, thank you again for letting me meet remotely today. I appreciate your guys' flexibility and appreciate the opportunity to meet with you guys once a month. Hopefully you can do it more in person in the near future. So we are at a fairly critical point on the phase 2 of this project, as we need to really start making some decisions to move forward. We've spent a fair amount of time over the past couple of months digesting what the market is telling us, what we think we can achieve on the property, and where we think we can be successful. Just a little background and update. So last September, we agreed to amend the development agreement that originally had a requirement for a boutique hotel. This group provided some flexibility associated with that, focused mostly on ground floor retail and second floor office space. We dove into that, worked with our design team, looked at concepts associated with just having activated ground floor and second floor of office. We also engaged multiple brokers, commercial brokers in the area. Brianna may be there this evening to give you some more insight on what the market is doing. We also talked with Wendy Shoemaker and Lincoln Haygood, with a couple other brokerages, to give us an insight on what could be palatable in that market or what the competition is doing in the local market. In general, the response has been the cost of new construction is currently not well supported by the rent structures in the Caldwell market, let alone the cost structure in the Treasure Valley is tough to support new office space. And then the increase in vacancy in the entire Treasure Valley doesn't support a whole lot of new product coming online. The one feedback I did get from Lincoln was executive office may be an option for the area, but it's not something that we would typically develop, and we don't have any background and understand the risk factors associated with that. Some positive news, we did get to 100% of our retail leased in the Tillian, thanks to TOK and all their efforts there. Kindred Vineyards, the Griddle, and the last space that was leased is Bubbly Facial Bar, which I think is currently in designs, possibly in the permitting process, with the hope of all of them being open this summer or fall, which will be great to activate the entire ground floor. We do have a fully signed LOI and working into lease documents for concept with the Wilder Group, Wild Child, to go into this new building. And we have two other LOIs that we're negotiating right now with two other retail tenants to go into this new concept building. Additionally, we did get stabilized in the Tillian building at 95% of the residential was fully occupied and leased. This is about 6 months behind our projections, but it's good to know that we are at a full leased or full occupancy on the building. With that said, we are at a point that, again, that we need to try to make some decisions on how best to move forward on phase 2. So I think the biggest thing that everyone needs to understand is kind of what the market has told us over the past couple of months, or maybe even the past couple of years. As much as we agree and really hope that there will be a boutique hotel in downtown, currently we're not seeing support for that. Additionally, having conversations with OB companies who spend a fair amount of time doing the research with the city and the Urban Renewal Agency, and then ultimately deciding not to engage and move forward. And then speaking with them, they let us know that they just couldn't get comfortable with the current market there in support of what they were trying to develop. As I mentioned earlier, the office market is also, you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. The office market, as I mentioned earlier, is not well supported for new product. I think the average office rents in downtown are somewhere between $15 and maybe $18 a square foot, depending on how much improvements are being done. We would need somewhere north of upper 20s to $30 a square foot to make a new product work. Retail support is good, but rates are lower in Caldwell than they are in the Treasure Valley. And again, with the residents, it's great to be fully stabilized at the Tillian, but there is a fair amount of competition in the market that we are dealing with. So at this point, we have some options that I'd like to discuss today. How best to move forward on this current product. Do we do for just a single story retail-focused tenant, commercially focused tenant, possibly a multi-story with some sort of housing element above the ground floor, and or a multi-story with some sort of short-term lease or VRBO and mix of longer-term rentals on the upper floors. What is not a current viable option in the market is a boutique hotel and or office, in our opinion, because we can't make the rent support new construction. So in regards to our current agreement, it's pretty straightforward in regards to what was amended. It calls out for two general options. One would be an office function above a ground floor retail, or a boutique hotel. And then the final option is what I'd like to talk to you today about, which is really any other purposes that could be used on the property. And we feel that the other options really are those that were mentioned earlier in regards to we focused on ground floor retail or ground floor retail with some sort of residential option above, or residential being a short-term residential like a VRBO or an Airbnb to hopefully get some of those travelers coming into the area. I pulled up some relevant images that you guys have seen before a few months ago as a presentation of what this space could look like with residential above. And then the couple of concepts that one of them we reviewed before, which would be this ground floor, again, activated with retail and some housing above that. And then the other option would be just a single-story ground floor retail. I think what's important to note is that we do have interest in retailers that are well established in the community and are interested in coming into the Caldwell market. But we don't have much confidence with, in addition to some of the residential, we don't have much confidence in the office market. And we do not believe in a boutique hotel in downtown at this current time. So with that, I will stand for any questions or discussion.
Okay, we will open it up for questions. Mr. Doty.
Yes, thank you for showing up tonight, whether it's remotely or not. We still appreciate you being here. I do like number 3, even though that's new to me. I hadn't really given that any consideration, and so that did pique my interest. If option 3 were to take place, would you be willing to go higher than 2 stories, or only 2? Is that your max based on your budget requirements?
I think we would be looking at 2 stories above the ground floor, so a 3-story facility. And then depending on if we continue to see good momentum in the market, then we may look to add another story. But I'm honestly not a big proponent of a 4-story walk-up type of product.
I just misunderstood. So you're spot on with what I was thinking about. And I think also with the new parking advisory committee, that with the proper enforcement and the proper signage down there, that shouldn't be an issue. And I think it would be a good idea to have people that are popping in and out of our town to see what's going on could take a look at it versus the residents that become familiar with everything downtown. We have a lot of that going in around in certain areas, and I think I'm definitely interested in the option 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Doty. Mr. Moore.
Mr. Chairman, Dean, thanks for coming in tonight and talking to us. So one question. So why not a 4th story? Tell me what I'm just curious, what is that?
Why not 4 stories?
Correct.
Well, this current design that we're looking at right now is actually a walk-up. So there is no elevator served on the current product. So 4 stories always feels a little bit too uncomfortable for me, and just not a supporter of that. Additionally, the additional units into the market, we might be more comfortable now, but it did take us 6 months longer to get stabilized next door. So it's possible, but it's probably more likely that a 3-story on top of, or a 2-story on top of a ground floor is going to be more successful, especially if we're looking at the kind of 3rd option that Mr. Doty was noting. I think there will be seasons it might be tough to get kind of short-term rentals.
Dean, let me ask you, is there condominium living in that proposed option 3?
No, again, as pointed out earlier, parking is likely our biggest issue when it comes to condominiums. The price point that we'd have to sell at for a condominium, I assume that someone buying a condo would want their vehicle to actually be parked on property. This does not contemplate that.
Okay. So let me ask you this. In your opinion, how do you see parking with this proposed option number 3? How does that all work together?
Well, luckily we do control parking next door in agreements that are already in place a block away. So we would use those current agreements to allow for parking on this property.
Anything else?
In additional parking?
Yeah.
No, our current agreement calls out that unless I'm building a boutique hotel, there's no additional parking request coming from me.
Do you think that creates a mess? Do you think it's enough? What do you see as you look at that?
It's a good question. I think I need to spend a little more time with the kind of folks that are dealing with parking and residents day in and day out. Now that we are fully stabilized and occupied, it'll be a good test to see if the current parking arrangement works for our current needs. I haven't had any negative feedback in regards to the parking availability for our residents. I think the next test is when the rest of the retail is open, if that causes impact. But I think the types of retailers that are there, it actually balances the use of the residents in other areas downtown, being a majority of our breakfast user and then an evening user and then kind of a mix in the middle of the day. So I think the balance will work out well for the parking on the current demand, but probably should spend a little bit more time with, again, the property manager to better understand if they're having any impacts. But again, I haven't heard anything in terms of issues associated with parking.
So last question, Dean. Let me just ask something without going down a rabbit hole or disclosing too much information, because I understand. You're financing on a project like this with the proposed parking. Do you think everything would the moon and the stars, everything line up pretty good? What's your feeling on that?
In regards to financial requirements?
Correct.
Oh, that's probably one that I probably should spend more time and actually have a discussion with our current financial partner on the project next door to see if there's any sort of impact by adding additional units to that. I don't expect it, but I'm happy to report back and after I have a conversation with him.
Well, thanks for coming tonight. I appreciate it, and I like the looks of that. I think before we do anything, Mr. Chairman, that we've really got to figure out some parking and some ordinances and some order in the jungle down there. Thank you.
Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Dean.
Mr. Allgood?
Thank you.
Yeah, Dean, I'm not 100% against this idea. I'm not a fan of a lot of downtown residential parking, or not parking, living. And this, if we were to do option 3 is what we're discussing here, would it be possible to do a larger unit size, less density than what we have in the Tillian?
A larger unit type for short-term mix of residential?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how many apartments you would end up with if you, again, I'm trying to reduce the number of apartments, maybe make a larger apartment instead of 800 square feet, maybe 1,100 kind of situation.
An 1,100 square foot apartment in my world is about a 3-bedroom, which is a tough rental unit. The third option here is more of a kind of Airbnb, and the sweet spot for that is a 1-bedroom, gross into a 2-bedroom. So anything above that would get tough. Probably the best thing to do is spend a little more time if this concept is of interest, is actually diving into, what is the most economically viable in regards to short-term rentals and maybe some possibly like corporate units. When I say corporate units, like someone coming in for a month, but without really diving into that, I don't have the information at my fingertips. I just really wanted to get support for this concept before we spent too much time on it.
All right.
Mr. Moore?
Mr. Chairman, another question. Dean, this proposal versus a boutique hotel, what economic impact does that have? I mean, how do you see this as it impacts the other businesses around it, the other businesses in this downtown corridor? Tell me what your thoughts are on that, would you?
Yeah, I think I think I said it from day one. I'm not a boutique hotel operator. We partner when it comes to that, and I think my understanding of boutique hotels is they need a certain number of keys to really be viable and make sure the demand is viable. The VRBO market and or commercial housing market is a balance between, you know, someone coming in and renting for a week and or renting for a month. And we do have corporate clients right now in certain locations that will rent a block of units, so 8 units at a time for a, you know, 5-year lease, if there's enough interest in the area. We haven't spent a lot of time in kind of the VRBO model. There are groups out there that do rent those in blocks also. And that's where we would probably lean into the ability to do that. So I'm probably not the best to compare, you know, a boutique hotel compared to this model. I would shoot from the hip a little bit to say a boutique hotel is likely not going to have kitchenette, you know, the functionality to actually make a meal. So you're probably going to generate more people from a boutique hotel into the community, you know, going out and having dinner or lunch or breakfast or a cup of coffee compared to someone, you know, staying in their, you know, VRBO or extended stay hotel room where they can actually make their own coffee and breakfast and dinner and others.
Thank you, Dean.
Yep.
Ms. Warwick?
Hi, Dean. Thanks for being here. I
Yeah.
appreciate your willingness to think outside the box. That's something that I don't think we'd ever considered before. And I think there's a real good argument for having something like that in our downtown for corporate clients that come in and would use that sort of thing. And I don't think the parking is going to be an issue. You know, there are going to be fewer people using parking places in a short-term rental. Typically, you're going to have one vehicle as opposed to a family having 2 many times. So I think that would mitigate the traffic issues. And I think it's a really good idea to have something like that for corporate clients to stay at, because we do have a lot of companies within Caldwell that would, I'm sure, take advantage of something like that. So I appreciate you thinking outside the box and coming up with that for use. I like it.
Great. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Mr. Pape? Dean, I think you're getting a pretty favorable reply tonight. Thank you for that report, and we will stay in touch.
Great. Thank you, guys. Have a great evening. I appreciate you letting me join remotely.
Well, thanks for letting us infringe on your family time.
All right. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Brings us to our next update from Wolfpack. I saw Carrie Smith's picture up there a second ago. She's back. Hi, Carrie.
Hi. Hi, Urban Renewal members, and thank you for allowing me to join remotely. I have a pretty brief update. We did apply for our building permit for tenant improvements on the space next to Happy Teriyaki. We do not have a tenant yet, but we are going to try and get that space closer to a place that would be a quicker lease, is our thoughts. Also met with a developer and explored quite a few ideas on the grass pad. I will say that it looks favorable, but the main issue is going to be finding an operator of the use that would want to be like a general manager partner. And so it's just an idea at this point, but I feel like it's making a little bit of progress. But that is all that I've got for right now. Any questions?
Thank you, Carrie. Any questions for Carrie? There are no questions.
Okay, I will say I wanted to thank staff on the record. We had some concerns with parking again down there, and staff just jumped in really quick and helped make sure that those pickup signs got reinstalled. And so we're really grateful for Caldwell's efforts on helping us. So thank you.
Great. Thanks for the kind words. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
You too. Bye, guys.
And our final update is from Ms. Sinner from Canyon County Fair. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I don't know if I know how to use this, but there we go. Okay, last time I was here was in September, and we had two projects in the works at that point. One was getting our fiber connected, which is finally done, and then also the lighting and audio along the pedestrian pedestrian path on Gabiola Field. So both of those are complete. And then, so we have, I'm looking at Ray Lynn because the finances were a little confusing there for a bit. We have $230-some thousand left. I had talked to you about a ticket booth on County Fair Avenue in September, which is a pretty minor project. The big project, and this is very exploratory at the moment. I mentioned it to the mayor. I had a discussion with Juan that runs the Caldwell Events Center, but there's a Gabiola Field across from Wilson Drain. There's part of it that is all sloped and unusable. And so we have explored excavating that and then repurposing that dirt to level out Gabiola Field. And then we would put a retaining wall in, a concrete retaining wall, and landscaping along the top of the fence line, which would be behind Talk Time Stella's rent-to-own. The goal is to gain every ounce of usable space that we can get out of Gabiola Field. And then we would also be able to use the perimeter gate off County Fair Avenue. We've never really been able to use it. I have some pictures coming up, but it's quite a big slope. So it's just been really awkward space, unutilized, and we're looking to fix that. It would be level and flat. It'd be used by the fair. It would be used by the rodeo. The contestants could park in there. It would still be grass. And then however it is city property, so however the city would want to use it, college, however that works. So here's some pictures just kind of showing you slope. The fence line that we're looking at, I'll back up. The fence line we're looking at, I measured today was 547 feet. And then it really kind of depends on the area, whether we're gaining 10 feet of usable space or 40. Or more than that. So these pictures, that's the gate going out towards Stewart's, and then the other picture is if you're standing at the gate looking at Simplot Stadium. So again, those were the funds allocated, funds spent, and really as far as next steps for us, if this is something that is favorable, would be, it is city property, we'd have to work with the city on their approval, making sure that you know, everything works that way. Because of the amount of the project, so it's over $50,000, it's under $200,000, but county process would dictate, you know, a bid process. That's gonna take some time. We wanna make sure that we're not doing this in the middle of fair or rodeo. So, questions?
Very good. Thank you for that report. Questions for Ms. Sinner?
Nothing.
That was easy.
That was easy.
Thank
Okay.
you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Takes us to old business, of which there is none, which takes us into new business. First action item is a public hearing. We will open this public hearing for the purpose of receiving public comment on the 2024 Annual Activities Report for the Caldwell Urban Renewal Agency. Ray Lynn is coming to the podium.
Sorry, I didn't pass these out before, yeah.
Thank you.
This is also in your packet, but the State Tax Commission and the State Controller's Office require that we do an annual report that kind of talks about just changes. This goes right along with our audit, which I presented last year. Even though it's printed out in front of you guys, it is on the Urban Renewal website in a digital format that reads so much nicer. Has both the revenue and expenditure budget items. But I just wanted to talk about kind of the highlights of some of the projects that we've gone over, because I always talk about budget, and there is a lot that we have done this last year. So as we just got talking about the Tillium project, that really Phase 2 is up and coming. The wayfinding plan, which is almost all the way completed. We have some development out in the East Ranch, such as the Home Depot and DMB and the North Ranch Business Park, that all added to the city, but were all first started out as urban renewal projects. So that's why we notate them. We have the Maverick and the North Ranch business area, which will be right next to the Fat Guy's Fresh Deli, which opened in 2023, and Baskin Robbins, which is coming. We worked to do a parking lot at the 306 South Kimball Avenue after working through the Brownfields grant process, which is very tedious if you don't know. We still have some projects in process, such as the 510 Arthur with TS Development and the 215 South Kimball with RRC. And then we are working with the North Caldwell infrastructure. A lot of this, I get from Steven. He keeps track of all of these. So Steven, we heard about the Maverick expansion in North Caldwell, but there also is looking to be the weather-tight roofing expansion that could possibly be going in. So just things like that. Obviously, Mr. Cole, Commissioner Cole, we didn't talk about his change on the board as being a new addition. And then the new area for Site A, which is at the Kimball and Arthur. So it's a pretty short plan, and we're just required to have public comment on it if anybody has questions. So.
Thank you, Raylyn. Any questions for Raylyn before she? Okay, seeing none. Do we have a motion to close this public hearing?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Takes us to our second action item, which is to consider resolution number 2025-02, authorizing the acceptance of the 2024 annual report for the Caldwell URA. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Doty, a second by Mr. Cole. Would the secretary call the roll?
Commissioner Doty?
Yes.
Commissioner Warwick?
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks?
Yes.
Commissioner Cole?
Yes.
Commissioner Allgood?
Yes.
Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner Porter?
Yes. Very good. Brings us to our next action item, which is a resolution number 2025-03, authorizing the amendment to disposition and development agreement, the DDA, to update the project schedule with TS Development. Mr. Hilty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kind of a housekeeping measure. Sean Mabin's been here regularly to update you on the progress of the project. It was delayed in part for design work that proceeded over the winter time. They planned to get started this spring, but it did cause them to fall behind their construction schedule. So I worked with him over the last month to update that. We'll talk about, let's start with subsection 2A. You'll see a March 3rd, 2025 date in there for the approval of design. He mentioned it when he was here giving the project update. That date obviously has passed, and I'm not sure what he had in mind there, but we were going to simply amend that by interlineation to April 14th, which is the next urban renewal meeting. We will have final design resolution for the agency to consider at that time. He was fine with that. And so, Mr. Chairman, if this passes and you sign that, we'll just update that to the next period. Design changes have not been, the kinds of design changes that Sean talks about and gets concerned about are not the kinds of things that should concern you. As you go from concept to building permit, walls get moved and HVAC equipment gets added or taken away or whatever, that project from their initial RFP response has not changed very significantly. Very, very minor types of changes compared to some of the things you've been asked to consider on other projects. And so I think it is kind of crossing the T's and dotting the I's, but this is not one where there's been a significant evolution in design. Moving on to the next page, they plan to get, they submit building permit in April, get started with actual physical construction in July. It says diligently pursue to completion, which is consistent with the current DDA. However, if you look at Exhibit A, which is kind of their critical path schedule, construction would be completed in September of 2026, about a year in construction. That concludes my report on this amendment, and I'd stand for questions.
Very good. Thank you, Mark. Any questions? Do you have a motion in regard to this resolution?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Doty?
make a motion that we approve resolution number 2025-03, authorizing the amendment to the disposition and development agreement to update project schedule with TS Development.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Doty, a second by Ms. Warwick. Any discussion? Would the secretary call the roll?
Commissioner Doty?
Yes.
Commissioner Warwick? Commissioner Brooks?
Yes.
Commissioner Cole?
Yes.
Commissioner Allgood?
Yes.
Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner Porter?
Yes. Takes us to action item number 4, consider invoices for payment as recommended by our treasurer.
So for this month, we have $18,900 for the March economic development contributions, $6,800 for the February attorney services, $511.70 for Project 9, $18,165 for the audit costs, $8,400 for the annual administrative fees, $58 for the printed copy of the annual report, $7,712.50 for the second half of the fiscal 25 ICRIMP annual premium, $143.33 for the legal notice for the RFP, and $34,320 for Project 24 for the underground power, for a total of $98,010.53.
Okay. Any questions for Raylene? Do you have a motion?
Approve the bills.
All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Warwick, a second by Mr. Doty. Would the secretary call the roll?
Commissioner Warwick?
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks?
Yes.
Commissioner Cole?
Yes.
Commissioner Allgood?
Yes.
Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner Porter?
Yes.
Commissioner Doty?
Yes.
Very good. Now our treasurer report.
So as you can see, total cash that we do have between the two bank accounts is just over 4.5 million, for 4,624,000. And for this, we are spending down both the operating and the east funds. Both the LGIP and the north area funds are increasing because we aren't spending out of those one, because I don't transfer anything from the LGIP, because that is more of a long-term investment, and then the north area just because we haven't had any projects to pay out. So the majority of the funds are coming either from east area, if they're east area projects, or the operating bucket. So, yeah, that's
Okay.
kind of my update.
Very good. Mr. Allgood.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Any questions for Raylene? Do you have a motion in regard to the cash reconciliation report?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Allgood.
I move that we accept the cash reconciliation as presented.
We have a motion by Mr. Allgood. Do we have a second? Second by Ms. Warwick. Would the secretary call the roll?
Commissioner Allgood?
Yes.
Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Commissioner Porter?
Yes.
Commissioner Doty?
Yes.
Commissioner Warwick?
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks?
Yes.
Commissioner Cole?
Yes.
Very good. And now to our project list.
Yes, so there's been a couple updates on the projects I just wanted to make you guys aware of. For the downtown signage, as you can see, there's about $107,000 available. Instead of doing a budget transfer to another project, community development, which includes planning and zoning and code compliance and parking and all of that stuff, is going to work with Destination Caldwell to spend those funds on some downtown signage for parking and things like that. So that was just a recent change, but we felt that was still within that wayfinding concept to make sure those signs were up to date. So, instead of doing a budget transfer to another project. The underground power has significantly, we've seen some cost in that. That is both Project 24 and Project 19 together. So even though we just approved a $34,000 bill and you see only $26,000 available, it is both of those projects together. So there is funding available on that one. As to the north area, like I said, we just have the current TIF agreement. We have not sent out any funds on that. And we're still working through that process, so.
Any questions for Raylene on the reconciliation report? Very good, thank you. Or the project list, rather, excuse me. Brings us to our economic development reports. Mr. Jenkins.
All right, hello again, Chairman, Commissioners. I'll be brief in my comments tonight. As I mentioned in a couple meetings ago, I'll focus heavily on the North Caldwell area. So with that in mind, I just want to touch base on what we all know is true with Maverick trying to break ground here in the coming weeks. They're hoping to be completed in this year, so the end of this year. So that will be an exciting project for the north area. And honestly, they've been a joy to work with. Todd and his team have been first class all the way through. So I'm excited to see that project go up. Plans have been submitted to the city, just FYI. Weather-tight roofing, that project is currently on hold. They're waiting for water infrastructure to come through the area where they're located, which is obviously in the urban renewal district, but they need water to obviously move the needle on that. And that's a forthcoming deal. We're looking at a holistic plan to bring water through that site and others in the vicinity. So we're just going to keep tabs on that, and I'll keep you all posted on the progress that's made. There's a property nearby called the Kelly property. It's owned by Mr. Kelly there. He has 35 acres. It actually is the property that's just north of that large canal that is above the District 26 site. So that individual is eager to annex into the city limits of Caldwell. He's actually looking at doing a neighborhood meeting here soon to get the process rolling. He's ready to go. He's planning a light industrial project there with he and his team. And that'd be a good addition for the area as a whole. It obviously coincides with our plans and objectives, and I'm working closely with him on the future of what that looks like. So additional updates, and I'm gonna ask IT if you have these notes by chance. Are you able to pull them up? I have a couple graphics I'd like to show, but if not, it's okay. So just a FYI, but I wanted to touch base on Compass and their demographic study for the area. As you all likely know, they're local demographers out of Meridian. They tabbed us originally at 78,000 people for our population of 2025, and I got the finalized numbers for what they're going to recommend in April, so this will likely be what's showcased, but at 77,640 people. That is a 5.74% increase from last year, and I mentioned this in the Economic Summit last week, whatever day it is, last week. And I think that's probably going to put us number one in the Treasure Valley for sure, but likely in the state for a growth rate annually. We're at 73,420 last year. So just want to thank you very much, Eddie. I appreciate it. So living wage for a family of 4. This is more of a national data report, but you can see that Idaho is $107,000 a year for a family of 4. The state that I moved from, Missouri, is $92,000, and when I moved here in 2014, it was very closely aligned with Idaho's household income and whatnot. The prices weren't as dramatically different. So those are the challenges that we face as in economic development. It's a graphic that I just want to show in terms of escalating prices in our region as a whole. Medium job tenure in years. I thought this was a pretty cool graph here as well. It shows that the public sector jobs provide a little more stability. We have a lot of public sector jobs being the county seat in Canyon County. And you can see also that manufacturing jobs are very sticky as well. So at 6.2 years, and then manufacturing is at 4.9 years. I don't know why I'm squinting. I have it in front of me here. But it just shows you what we want to focus on as a community. Public sector jobs are great, but we want private sector jobs to come in, but in particular manufacturing jobs. So we lost a pretty big project that I'm slightly bitter about still, but they weren't manufacturing jobs, they were warehousing logistics jobs. As you can see that they're not on our list here for the the tenure, the job tenure in years in terms of being one of the top-rated jobs from that standpoint. Manufacturing jobs just pay, they pay well, they're highly skilled, high wage, all that. So those are the ones that we really shoot for in Caldwell. This is one on inflation, and this list egg prices. We all kind of joke about it and whatnot, but man, seriously, December 2023 to December 2024 at 36.8% is unreal. The one that hits me the hardest, most likely, is gosh, where's Ninja Turtles here, or toys? I don't see toys here from Walmart, but action figures is what I'm looking for, honestly. But there, you can see that the prices have gone up dramatically. A big one is shelter. Airline fares is another big one. So those are things that have increased pretty dramatically over the past year. You can see how Americans spend their money. A good rule of thumb is that you want to spend about 28% of your income on where you live, on shelter. And in this graphic, it shows if you're making $77,300 a year and you're spending about $25,000.4 a year on shelter, then that's about 32% of your household income. So on average, folks are spending more than what is recommended nationally for shelter costs. And you can see kind of the wide range of what folks are paying for. Transportation is in second, then you see personal insurance and pensions and healthcare and others. But I thought this was a neat graphic to show, to kind of highlight what folks are spending money on these days. And then this is my last graph here, and this is an interesting one in economics per se. It shows that Amazon surpassed Walmart in sales, and that is an important benchmark. That was last quarter as in last year, in December of 24, but it shows its shift in shopping habits and how folks are going to online sales, digital sales, those types of things. E-commerce is really picking up. So that is a new thing in economics, and you can see over the years from 2014 to 2024, there's been a shift in consumer behaviors. So I thought that was something to highlight as well. So with that, Chairman, I'll stand for any questions you might have.
Mr. Allgood, is that a question?
It is, yeah. Going back to the start of your presentation, we had the discussion earlier about services out to the new Maverick store. Will that solve WeatherTight's water issues as well? Are they the same service, the same location, or are they different?
Yeah, Chairman, Commissioner Allgood, great question. It's actually a different area, but nonetheless, it's going to solve a water infrastructure issue for us. We're trying to get to District 26, but also through the site as users come in. We want to have that line readily available to tap into for future users that come in. So it does solve an issue, but not the WeatherTight issue. WeatherTight's a little farther south.
Okay.
Stephen, on that one too, Shane mentioned they were going to try to draw natural gas from the east, where that was a recommendation, and Maverick is taking it from the south.
For natural gas?
Yeah. What's the reason that they can't take it from the same place?
I think, Chairman, I believe that is predicated on the amount, so the load amount that one might need. This 40,000 square foot user, I'm actually in communication with them as well, and their need is just greater than what Maverick would need. There is infrastructure on the east for natural gas. They just need to pull it over, and unfortunately, our utility groups here, and this is not a disparaging comment by any means. They're great partners for us, but they don't speculate on infrastructure for that kind of need. So other states in the southeast, for example, will do that. They'll build substations. They'll put natural gas in the ground in anticipation of growth. But here we have to have users pay for that infrastructure to come in, or else it doesn't show up. So that's a challenge in our world. We're trying to mitigate that the best we can. But if you don't have a user there, then you definitely struggle with that need. And I think the timeline that was provided by District 26 is a valid one, because there is a supply chain consideration for high pressure pipe that is tied to natural gas. So that's another issue that we have to deal with consistently.
Very good, thank you. Dave?
Mr. Chairman, I've got a question and then I have a comment. So Stephen, the Amazon slide that we got here, what's the impact to local business here in Caldwell and surrounding community to this increase of online buying?
Chairman, Commissioner Moore, there's a very strong impact overall, I would say. As users look to e-commerce for their needs, it definitely shifts the habits of the buying power for downtown and those retailers that are out there. The one thing I'll say is, in Caldwell, we strive to create an environment that Amazon can't replicate. So we have Bond and Bevel, for example, they produce leather goods and whatnot, and coffee as well, and that ambiance that's very unique. Flying M is another one that's a very unique atmosphere that we try to create in our downtown, and those users that we like to draw into our downtown will further that experience and that opportunity for Caldwell specifically. So the hope is that over time, despite losing some of those consumers, folks can't replicate, in most cases, the experience of the situation that they at hand, or the shopping experience that they have. So that's what we're trying to do, is create more of a custom atmosphere that folks can't buy online.
I hope you're right. I've never ordered anything off Amazon in my life, and I never will. Growing up in a family business out in Otis, as soon as Walmart came in, we went like that. People didn't stop for anything. And we were constantly, 60-some years of reinventing ourselves and trying to get people to stop in a little tiny town. It was tough, and that was the end of that business in 2007.
Yeah.
Next observation, looking at your presentation here of medium of jobs, just sitting around here in 2007, 8, 9, 10, when we had the mortgage crisis, seeing how people left, the ones that I worked with in my job, the people that I knew that packed up and went back to wherever they came from, whether it was Texas, California, Oregon, Washington, Florida, they couldn't find a new job or a new line of profession that would support what they were doing here as they came here, sometimes out of their truck with a cell phone and a trailer. So I think this part of the presentation is relevant to numbers. I mean, I always said, if we can up our manufacturing and business here inside Ada and Canyon County, and this should ever happen again in whatever fashion of a crisis, people would lock in and stay here. And look at the increase as you're presenting here in jobs and opportunities. And I tell people, hey, grew up here. It was 1992. It was hard to find a $10 an hour job, and I've got 2 degrees. It was tough. Now you can find plenty of jobs, and then there's people that say, well, we can't live on $15, $20, $25, $30 an hour, and I understand that. But I think just the number of jobs that are available, I think it's relevant to what your presentation is. I like this one, living wage for a family of 4. Look at Idaho, 107,000. I mean, that's a pretty good sized number, and that calls for retention and less volatility for our local business. So I think it's relevant, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Commissioner Moore. I appreciate your comments. And yeah, we strive to diversify and stabilize our local economy. It really is our number one objective in economic development. So we're constantly looking at ways to bring in new industries that pay well, and high-tech industries, and manufacturing is top of the list.
Any other questions for Mr. Jenkins? Very good. Thanks, Stephen.
Great. Chairman, Commissioners, I failed to mention this. Ophelia is out of town, and I'll just report real quickly on one downtown update that I'm aware of, at least, that we've been working closely with the Griddle, and they started their tenant improvements about a week and a half ago. So we're excited to see them eventually move into that space, but it is moving, which is a great sign for them to eventually locate there. So just a heads up on that.
One last question. How has the response to the RFP on Site A been coming in?
Yeah, Chairman, thank you for asking. We fielded multiple questions on that, and I actually, gosh, Raylene, you provided a synopsis of the OpenGov activity for that, which, gosh, if memory is serving me correctly, I think we had 300 views. Okay, see, I was going to shoot us short there, but 300 views on there, which is a good sign on OpenGov. But I also personally sent it to a combination of brokers and developers and different representatives that I'm aware of, so about 42 or 3 folks that I sent it to directly. So.
And then typically the replies come in the day of, rather than kind of trickling in?
Yeah, they do, and they, yeah, it's kind of a waiting game. It is due next Monday at 5 p.m., and we'll see how the reception is, and we'll provide an update to this governing body to make sure you are aware. But our hope is that we have multiple proposals to choose from, so we can make the collective best choice for the city.
Very good. Thanks,
Mr.
Chief.
Chairman, so I did get online and on the city's website, I did go to that OpenGov, and it was pretty easy to find. I think I just needed someone like my chairman here, he held my little hand and walked me through it and kind of showed me and got me through it. So it does make a lot of sense. It is pretty transparent there. And at that Thursday economic meeting that we were at in Nampa, I did have somebody walk up to me and ask me, how do you find this? And so I got back with that person as I checked in with my chairman. So yeah, it's very transparent. It's right there. And then I think if I put in the search bar there, something opportunities, building or something opportunity, it took me right to that OpenGov. So yeah, it's very transparent. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Brings us to our attorney report. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to piggyback, go a little bit out of order, talk about that Side A. It's been a long time since we received RFP responses on projects, and that has to do with kind of where we're at in the activity on the various areas. So this will be new in, I was trying to think through, at least a couple of years. In that interim, we've had comments from time to time from different commissioners about how that vetting process goes. It's traditionally been handled kind of at staff level, and we brought forward a recommendation, but I think we decided some time ago we were going to do that differently. So I started a conversation with Stephen today about how to get the commissioners involved and what that might look like. We thought a workshop might be in order. We could do it at the next meeting. Because these things are coming in on a week from today, we might want to consider a special meeting. I'll kind of leave it up to you, Mr. Chairman, but it does seem like reviewing the responses to the RFP in a meeting and allowing commissioners to have some time to look at those responses and ask questions and make sense. You know, typically we might, there's no specific statutory way that this needs to be done. It just simply says the agency selects among those making proposals. How that happens is kind of up to us. We might want to shortlist or have interviews. So, you know, what you guys want to see is probably what we would want to do. So if there's some thoughts on that, or if you want to talk about it, share thoughts with me in the next week or so, you know, we want to be responsive to you on that front. So next, on the Lee Jinky site, as you know, we've been waiting for March to get the data on the base assessment roll. I talked to Ray Lynn before the meeting. That data is available. So we could proceed with crafting the feasibility study. One of the questions that needs to be addressed, probably sooner rather than later, is whether to continue to proceed with Lee Jenke's property as a site-specific urban renewal area, or is it going to be folded into a broader area? You tell us. If there's the chance that it would be folded into a broader area, it is far more efficient and would have no drawbacks for his project, for his reimbursement, or for the time frame to fold him into the same area. And so I don't know, Mr. Chairman, you sent me a proposal for preparing that feasibility study that I'm still looking at. If we get the details worked out there, presumably it would be back on at the April meeting. Yeah. And so maybe that's kind of our window of time to determine whether we want to proceed with a separate feasibility study or whether we would be expanding that. But I don't want that to go, I don't want you to go away tonight without understanding that there's at least some question there from staff side as to how and when we start with that feasibility study and whether it would be even necessary if it's going to be included with the broader project.
Let me ask this question. Would a project like Mr. Genke's be able to come back after, let's say he was fully built out, could he come back afterwards to seek reimbursements?
I don't think so. I've never seen it done that way. He would have to have, you wouldn't be able, you can't reimburse unless he's in a project area. And you can't create the project area unless you have that finding of deteriorated. So once he gets done with his project, it's likely to no longer qualify as an area. So it would need to be done now. Now, the timing of it, again, and we've talked about this before, basically, as long as your area is created by the end of the year, that's the best that you can do. In terms of starting to recover some revenue that could be used for a reimbursement. He could certainly build his project before we started having any revenue to reimburse him with. That would be okay, but we need to get the project area in place.
Understood.
And we're still, 3 or 4 months out, and maybe longer if, there may be some delay in, wouldn't be a delay in creating the area, because that's going to be, something that happens by the end of the year. Anyway, I'm trying to figure out how to juggle these things, and I'm presenting the issue to you to help resolve it.
Mr. Allgood?
Yeah, Mark, and thinking about this urban renewal area that we discussed this evening and rolling Mr. Jenke's property in, and typically when we've done urban renewal areas, they've been vacant land. When they're built on, the increment goes up very quickly. This is a whole different animal. There's hardly any vacant land. It's simply the value of what exists going up, and I have some concerns on the ability to build increment and how fast that would occur, because we're trying to rebuild what already exists. And so what I'm getting at is, if we rolled Mr. Genke's property into the larger, would that, do you see us delaying being able to reimburse Mr. Genke for his investment, because now we have such a bigger increment area?
Great question. I don't know that I can answer it off the cuff. It's feasibility type stuff. Just at the risk of getting out over my skis on it a little bit, his property is, I think, essentially vacant, and he's going to build, I think, 7 units. So it'll go from very little taxes, to a significant amount of taxes.
You're exactly what I'm thinking, yes.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good point, and that might be, a reason to think about them differently. But just so that you know, as we look at these little, we have some experience now with Site A, being these site-specific ones, the little site-specific ones where there's relatively smaller projects, they are a little bit burdensome on the staff level, I think, to create them. Even though there is some benefit certainly for the economic redevelopment down the road. So, we are started with Mr. Jenke's, and we could continue it, but generally speaking, I think what we're looking at as we go through this is better to look at, broader areas if you can. I know some of the site-specific ones across the state that have been very, very successful would be, a 40-acre site that was going under development by, and in, all owned by one company. And so they were going to create lots of increment very early on in the process. And this, I guess, Mr. Jenke's might be seen as a micro scale of that. But generally, the larger ones are less burdensome on staff. Okay, well, let me know how you can proceed.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Cole.
Would it be, it seems to me it'd be procedurally appropriate to ask Mr. Genke which way he might like to go to?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to reach out to him and see. Yeah, I suspect he's going to want to keep his separate. Yeah. And so whether that's the best approach, I guess, is going to ultimately be up to you, but we can certainly ask him. Ms. Warwick?
Yeah, I'm thinking Mr. Genke's project, didn't he tell us he was pretty much ready to go very soon? And so I'm thinking if we rolled it into a bigger one, it's going to take us much longer to put that together. And, if he gets that built up before we're done with that, that creates a problem for him with getting reimbursed, and we don't want to do that to him. I don't have a problem with keeping his separate.
Okay. Mr. Moore?
Mr. Chairman, I think we've been working on this for about, 3, 4, 5 months. I went through his phase 1 that we got, what was that, this last week? I went through that line by line. I don't see any issues there. went through his estimates of costs that came out to us. It seems like everything's in line right there. He's $4.80 under budget. So I don't know what we're waiting for. You know, rates have came down. We've got a bare lot sitting over there. He's going to build, what, 7 cottages? You know, we have some affordable housing at what he's projecting to sell that at. I say we call him tomorrow and find out yes or no. Do we want to proceed? What do we want to do? And let's get the show on the road.
Okay. Does that sound like a reasonable plan of action? Very good.
All right. Last month, I presented to you this process outline for the new creation of new areas, and where we left that, as you might recall, is going to allow you to digest it, make comments on it, ask questions. I don't think I received any input on it, and so if you're comfortable, we'll consider it final. And then,
I thought it was very good.
Thank you. And then, yeah, the clerk can post it online or make it available to folks making inquiries.
Great, thank you.
Yep. The last one was on that fair building project status. I think Diana probably in her presentation answered questions on that. So looks like that concludes my report unless there are questions for me.
Any questions for Mr. Hilty?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Mr. Moore?
So I went through the, and this is on the, I believe this is the RFP on Arthur and Kimball and Arthur. And it was dated 1/14/2025, and I'm trying to make heads or tails of it. I think, is this the RFP?
Can I come look at it?
Yeah, absolutely. I killed a small tree printing that one too, but I did go through it and looked at it. Is that?
That document is the urban renewal plan for Site A.
For that site?
It's not the RFP, but it is
is
for
the
that
site.
site. And-
Okay.
And it's the urban renewal plan.
Okay. So if I've got questions on this as I go through it with a yellow marker here, I can, who do I bring that to? You or Ray Lynn, or who do I start with?
So the urban renewal plan was prepared and approved by the city council. It's an ordinance, of course. And so I think if you want to reach out to Stephen or I or Ray Lynn, either one, if you've
Yeah.
got general questions, I'd be happy to look at them.
Okay.
Douglas drafted it, so he would be a good one to
Okay.
talk to. To the extent it's got financial stuff, I think, Ray Lynn, you did the feasibility study on it. Rob was involved in the project list.
Okay.
So
let me ask this question to Ray Lynn or our chairman here. Has city council looked at this document? Has it?
Yeah.
Right. Everybody looked at it? Yeah.
they approved passed the ordinance.
Okay. It was in the packet, so I assumed everybody looked at it, right? Okay. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Brings us to the final events here. Any commissioner reports?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Morgan?
I just had a quick question of Mr. Jenkins.
Sure.
Yeah, Stephen, you heard Ms. Sinner talk about making some changes out there to access and taking down that hill. And we have had discussion previously about enlarging the parking lot on that side of the stadium. Would those be in conflict? Would they make no difference between each other? Do you have any idea? I realize this is early, but.
Yeah, Chairman, Commissioner Allgood, I was thinking about that, so I'm glad you brought that up, but I don't believe so. One of the changes on Gabiola we had talked about was extending that portion of Gabiola that goes south and bringing it up to the fence line of the Taco Time area and
Yes.
rent to own and whatnot. And there, I don't believe it conflicts with the area that she was discussing in terms of expanding it. In my mind, I was thinking she was going farther east. But I can clarify with her. That was something I had thought about as well, just to make sure that there wasn't a conflict there. But I don't believe so, but I'll verify that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Moore? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. All right, any other, Mr. Doe?
I just want to say, Steve did give a presentation at that economic development conference that you and I and Commissioner Brooks, Commissioner Moore at least, I'm sorry if any of you other two were there, And I appreciate you being part of that. So Steve, it was a good presentation and even had some humor in it, so it was pretty good. All right.
All right. Do we have a motion for adjournment? All right, we are adjourned.